Hi, my name is Jamie Cook, and I'm the Director of Litigation at the Center for Gender and Refugee Studies. In today's edition of Asylum in the 21st Century, What's New, I'll be telling you about an alarming new rule from the Trump administration that poses a massive threat to the communities I work with, asylum seekers fleeing life-threatening violence in their home countries. I'll also be sharing how you can take action today to make a difference and stop this rule from ever taking effect. A little background. Over the past 3 years, through a patchwork of hateful policies and sweeping attorney general decisions, the Trump administration has attempted to rewrite our asylum laws with the explicit goal of excluding as many Black, Indigenous, and people of color as possible. Women and children fleeing brutal domestic violence were among the administration's first targets. Subsequent policies have taken aim at vulnerable children and families, trapped asylum seekers in perilous conditions in Mexico, and weaponized the global pandemic against children at the border. Now, the administration has proposed a new rule that would dismantle the U.S. asylum system, codifying the administration's contempt for refugees, especially, but not only those arriving at our southern border, in a set of binding federal regulations. We have just a few days left to speak out. The agencies proposing the rule will be accepting public comments on the rule only through July 15th. The agencies will be required to consider and respond to every unique comment received, so our voices really do matter. If they are flooded with comments, it will take longer to finalize the rule and start using it to deport asylum seekers. So what would the new rule actually do? Well, in short, it would upend the legal framework for seeking asylum and other forms of protection, substantially decreasing the availability of refuge in the United States. For example, the regulations would make it harder for asylum seekers to pass initial screening interviews at the border, meaning many would never have the chance to appear in immigration court, where there are greater due process protections. They would completely change the legal definition of a refugee in such a way that most asylum seekers would have no way of winning protection. The regulations would specifically shut out women and girls fleeing gender-based violence, children and families targeted by gangs, and LGBTQ-identified people facing discrimination and violence. The regulations would also significantly limit the grounds for seeking protection based on political opinion. They would make it harder for survivors of torture to win protection from deportation by changing the definition of torture to require that a government official acting in his or her official capacity be involved. And they would create 12 new adverse factors intended to tip the balance at the final discretionary determination stage against granting asylum, even if the applicant somehow managed to meet all of the rule's restrictive new requirements. Even an expert asylum attorney would struggle to navigate the minefield of restrictions the rule imposes. For the many asylum seekers, including children, who are forced to represent themselves in court, winning protection under this new regime would be virtually impossible. It's important to understand that asylum seekers come to the United States fleeing unimaginable violence. For many asylum seekers, deportation can mean a death sentence. There is no doubt that these regulations would endanger thousands of lives. And that's why it is so important that we take action now to help stop the proposed regulations from ever taking effect. You can click the link below to learn more about the new rule and submit your comment today. Your comment doesn't have to be long, and you don't need to be an asylum expert to make your voice heard. It is critical that everyone who cares about the rights of those escaping persecution and torture to obtain refuge in this country comes together and makes as much noise as we can to ensure that this rule never sees the light of day. CGRS and our immigrants' rights partners are ready to use every tool at our disposal to fight this new rule.